Collins. Dockery.
Present.
Yossi.
Present.
We're ready to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, approve the agenda. Looking for motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dockery, second by Campbell to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The ayes have it. Number 3, new business. Discussion on South 25th Street and Fellner's Addition. Nevada, turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So we received a complaint from a resident that lives on South 25th Avenue regarding the condition of the road, the streets. So Tony went and took some pictures, which I passed out. You should all have a copy of those. Let me know if you don't. And I also printed out a copy of the draft CIP that we had put together last year and provided you a copy of that as well. This part of Fellner's was part of a 3-phase plan that had been put into at least a preliminary kind of design or project phase by our public works staff and our engineer to address the different areas in Fellner's that need to be, that need street improvements. So we have a baseline preliminary project cost for doing an improvement project on South 25th Avenue. They provide cost in both hot mix asphalt overlay as well as concrete. And so I wanted to get this in front of the council following this complaint that was received by the resident, provide those pictures. That project cost is a little bit outdated. It was probably done a year and a half ago, so it's probably increased a little bit since then. But looking for some direction from the council on how to proceed forward with addressing the issues on this street. If we want to go out and get quotes for patching, if we want to try and do a street improvement project and look at what funding we would use, it would likely be coming from reserves at this point. The projects that are in the budget for this year that are the significant cost projects are already out to bid or have been contracted. So just looking for some direction from the council on how to move forward with this project.
Those streets down there never were paved. That's just seal coat on top of seal coat on top of seal coat. You know, there's some places in there that need to be addressed, patched. I don't know if we could take a look at milling that part of that bad spot and putting a seal coat on it. Because we don't have the funds to do asphalt. I mean, I think in the budget, the old numbers is 600,000. That would be one thing. We did put in curb and gutter down there. I can't remember how many years ago, 10, 12 years ago. We also had an issue with the neighbors running their sump pump lines out to the street, which helped accelerate the wear and tear on the roads. But that's one thing I'd like to see is a price of fixing the bad spots and maybe resealing coat, put a double seal coat on it.
I remember having discussions about this long before our new council members and administrations even here. So as Councilman Dockery is saying, that project back for that overlay, even asphalt at the time, I believe it was six or seven, to do the whole entire roadway. Our former mayor's here, he's advocated for that and worked with those residents down there too. And it's something that we just decided that we would address it next year or the following year and the following year. Now there's another complaint that's come up. You know, we sometimes tend to forget about our first subdivisions, and sometimes we get so focused on what's new here and what's coming that we do just a minute tend to neglect areas like this. It's been like this for a while. I know it's not in the budget right now, but this is, you know, we've been talking about this for, I don't know, 12 and a half years maybe. I think it's time to redo the roadway down there. You know, it's, with the complaints we got with this new complaint, it's just something that shows that We do care about the older areas of Eldridge, and we don't want any further wear and tear. 5, 6 years ago, there's a project down on Oak Street, around Oak and Spring and throughout there regarding asphalt and storm mitigation. That's really helped. That's really helped that neighborhood out. You know, you can really tell a vast difference when you go through there, especially after a rainstorm. I believe we need to make things right down there, you know, over this addition and redo the whole roadway, look to see what that might look like and what possible funding it is to do that. Also with the storm sewer mitigation involved with it. Thank you.
I would agree with you, Adrian. I think that Fellners is kind of the unwanted stepchild sometimes. It's out there and out of sight, out of mind.
It is.
And I think it's probably the worst street in town if you drive around town. I'm in favor of looking at what we have in reserves and seeing if we can do it right, so that it's gonna last a long time, so that councils down the road aren't trying to fix it again. It's almost embarrassing to see streets like that in our town, and it's not blaming anybody, nobody's fault at all. But I think it's time to fix it and do it right.
I'm first of all, I'm not a fan of the patching. Looking at the photos here, I think we're gonna have some serious sub-base issues. The other thing is, like you mentioned, Adrian, this is something that's been discussed for quite a while and it's been put on the back burner. I would definitely encourage us to consider using some road tax or sales tax reserves. And I think the whole project needs to be addressed. I don't know that if we have reserves there, why stretch it out to 3 phases? Why not get it done and put it behind us? You're gonna have mobilization savings by doing it all at the same time versus doing it in 3 phases. And that cost savings could be considerable. So I think we need to look at making a decision now, you know, sooner than later.
When we talked to the city engineer about this, can you also see what it would cost to tear it out, put curb and gutter back, new sub base with the proper drainage, but to see what it would cost to do true blacktop over the rock base? Because Davenport redid 53rd Street, put all new rock base, new drains in, and I don't know how thick that blacktop is, but they did not cement 53rd. From Brady all the way up to Elmore Avenue, that's all blacktop. It's quite a bit thick, I know, but I don't know what their reasoning was, so the engineer might be able to explain if there was a cost saving or why they put thick blacktop over rock and not cement.
So we want to get a estimate for the project for both asphalt and concrete updated.
Yeah, unless he has a reason why that wouldn't be, you know, practical here, but I know they did do that for whatever reason. That's a very busy road.
Brian, what do you think? It's probably 6 inches thick on 53rd, 3 lips?
It's 18 inches of rock and with 9 inches asphalt.
9 inches, okay. I knew you'd know.
Yeah. That's, asphalt's a flexible pavement. If you don't have a base on it, it's going to deteriorate at an accelerated rate.
Right.
You know, I still get back, I think we need to price the double seal code like Lincoln Road. Look how Lincoln Road's held up. There's not a lot of traffic. This whole neighborhood, the city of Eldridge inherited. It wasn't built to our standards, so there's some issues down there, without a doubt. There's no storm sewer that I know of along the streets. So if you're gonna do it right, you gotta do the subsurface, do the storm sewers, and put a surface on it that's gonna last 20 or 30 years.
Can we go back, Jeff, and see? I thought this was addressed like just a few years ago temporarily, like there was a blowout from the frost and all that in the winter, and they dug it out, put in rock, whatever, but then I thought it got tar and pea gravel.
Yeah, part of the issue is, like Brian said, there's curb and gutter installed 10 or 12 years ago, but there was nothing to pin it to, so that's now rolled. and you've got a jagged edge of the curb sticking up that's not allowing water to even get into the curbs, and that's just running down the sides and, you know, gets frozen and thawed and tears up everything that's along the curb at this point. So,
Okay. Yeah, cause I thought that wasn't that old, what was done.
yeah, the curbs, if you drive down there, you'll see that the front of the curb toward the road is in some places 4 inches, 3 inches, you know, above the surface of the street because they've rolled backward.
Yeah, I've seen that, but I just meant, I thought it did get reseal coated
Yeah,
not that
maybe,
long ago.
But the curbs themselves
Well,
would
yeah.
cause that to get destroyed.
Right,
so.
so I don't, where I'm going with that is I don't think it would be a good idea to resurface it temporarily because it wasn't that old, what was done. It will fail again.
I can try to research that and email it out to everybody.
Okay,
so we
thank
know.
you.
Yep.
Frank, I don't think we've seal coated that whole thing down there for a long time. They might have patched.
No, I know, this one here in the picture here, that whichever, that first street is an addition, that, I know for a fact that whole thing got that tan rock put on the whole street after he fixed the blowout. And it was just, yeah, it was only just a chip seal or whatever you call that, just a few years ago.
25th? Or
Yeah.
no?
Well,
Yeah,
to avoid this, you're gonna have to get storm sewer intakes to get the water away from the road, or you're gonna continue to have this, doesn't matter what type of wearing surface you put in there. So they'd have to do, elevations from the north end to the south to see if they can drain it all the way to the ditch on Black Hawk Trail.
Just, some additional input from, Tony on this. The patches are gonna be too big for our team to do internally if we were looking at patches. He did say that they could get it, quoted for seal coat like they did with Lincoln Road, but that would hold this road together for about another year or so. He said we could have the end of South 25th quoted for permanent replacement, knowing that the remainder of the road would be tied into and replaced in the next year or two. Some thoughts from what they've seen out there and what they've looked at with Zach and Mitch.
I disagree with your timeframe, but that's my experience over their knowledge, I guess. There's things you can do to increase the load carrying capacity of that. If you get a big roto mill and mill in like a 2-inch clean, 2-inch down to add stabilization below it, it's an option. You know, that stuff down on Black Hawk Trail probably needs to be poured out and redone.
You're saying improve the base though first.
Oh,
part of that
absolutely.
process.
If you don't have a good base, no matter what you put on, it's
Right.
gonna deteriorate.
The project costs for them do include the storm sewer intakes, storm sewer pipe and that, in that project cost. Again, that's a little updated, so that's gonna be increased a little bit from there, but they are taking all of that into account in those project costs that you have in your packet.
I would like to get some answers to is the benefits of doing asphalt versus PCC and the life expectancy of the asphalt, just out of curiosity.
About half
Half for the asphalt?
of PCC. Where you gain with asphalt, if it gets rutted, you can just go mill it and put a cap on it. Where concrete, you have to tear out. But the lifespan of asphalt's about half of that for concrete.
I agree with Ryan, get some information and numbers back to us, I think we should move forward.
Same here, maybe you can get additional numbers to that, so, don't know, maybe go out to bid and see what's what, there's cost estimates from our engineer, and I think that's the right thing to do. But the whole thing just needs to be replaced, again, it needs to be done right, so we're not revisiting this every year or every other year.
We can do anything with time and money.
That's right.
Just where do you want to spend it?
as far as the 3 phases, I think the original conversation that was for the inconvenience for all the homeowners, so that the whole place wasn't just a big hot mess. They'd do it in sections, so that way the people like on South 25th can, whichever end they're on, they can get to a road that's still Still Road and then move through the place, so that way the homeowners all still had a way to get to and from their houses.
And they could still do it in 3 phases that way if the contractor was directed to do one street at a time, but they could still do it with the same mobilization.
Right.
I mean, if we do all the streets down there, we're looking at $1.5 million to $1.8 million per price. So that's more than doing South First Street. And you can do South 25th and bid the other ones as alternates
Yeah,
to see how the prices come in, then we can have a choice on what we're gonna do and how much we're gonna do.
good idea.
That was sorry.
Is everybody good with that for right now then?
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Move on to number 4, old business, fiscal year 26 budget. Nevada, I'll call on you for that.
Okay, so you should all have an updated copy of your budget. That includes the changes as directed at the last council meeting. I did send out a memo as well to kind of summarize what those changes are. We will have our max tax levy hearing on April 7th at 5:30. And then we'll set the public hearing for the budget adoption in the city council meeting later that evening. So just recapping the changes that were made from the last budget conversation that we had. In the general fund, administration fund, we increased the line item for transferring to other funds by $140,000. That was for $100,000 to be allocated to the Public Facilities Capital Project Fund, which will likely go into that, what's currently the Street Project Capital Fund. And then $40,000 to be allocated to a Fire Department Capital Project Fund. I'm waiting to hear back from the state on the best way to account for that, whether that would be a capital project fund or if that should go into a different line item to be able to carry over from year to year. The $50,000 for the potential contribution for the Workforce Housing Tax Credit Program was moved from the general fund to the general fund's Community Development Fund to be able to set aside the potential for that money. I also looked at the inspections department after the department head presentation at our last meeting. I did move the wages that were in the overtime line out of there for that 1,000 because with that position being a salaried position, it's exempt from overtime. So that $1,000 got freed up in the general fund to allocate towards another project. In the sales tax fund line, the other capital line was increased from $675,000 to just over $700,000 to account for some changes in the 4th Avenue traffic signal project and to be able to be prepared for those. The minor projects line and the miscellaneous administration line in that sales tax fund budget were adjusted to be able to balance that budget for the year. There were no projects currently allocated to anything for those funds. Those were the lines that were adjusted to balance that budget. We also got our renewals back on our general property and liability insurance. We had a really good renewal year, looking at a very minimal cost increase. We didn't show any right now, but 2 of our quotes will change based on what our cost of living increase is going to be. They're based on wages. So with that, we were able to decrease what was set aside in the fiscal year 26 budget because we had budgeted for another 10% increase. So we were able to bring that down by 10% and free up some funds in the general fund as well. And then everything that was left over after making those changes and transfers as directed by council was moved into the miscellaneous administration line. That line item now has a total of $120,750, and we have zeroed out that contingency line. I think we've been through most of the funds. At this point, we're just looking for direction or discussion on any other projects, any other questions for the budgeted funds to get that final preparation ready to get it adopted to send to the state in April.
Well, from all of our discussions that we have had, looking at adjustments which have been made and recommended from the council, it appears to be everything's in line. It's nice to see some money's freed up, especially after talking about possible future road projects that have been neglected. So I have no concerns with what's been done. It appears to look satisfactory for us to move forward on.
I also think you did a nice job in Nevada of putting this all together, and what you put together is a good reflection of what we wanted, so I'm good with it.
I'm satisfied with what you've put together as well. I'm gonna,
Leave it to me.
This is saving the best for last, Brian.
I think generally it's pretty good shape. There's a few things in here that I disagree with. One is, and Scott will have a coronary on this, increasing the capital improvements cost for the parks by 25% this year. You know, we're raising taxes, but then we're increasing capital improvements at the parks by 25%. To me, that doesn't make sense. The other thing in here is squad cars. As this is presented, we're buying 2 squad cars and leasing 2 more. Did we agree on leasing vehicles? I don't remember that. I mean, we're raising taxes and we're gonna get 4 new squad cars? Are we gonna get rid of squad cars? Or is this a backdoor approach to get every policeman a squad car, which I don't agree with that either. So I don't know how much money is in, it's just one lump sum number for 2 new squad cars and leasing 2. Can anybody tell me, did we agree to do that?
we've had discussions several times over it. I think there was question whether or not it was the right thing to do by leasing versus buying, and I think my recollection of that conversation was if we bought 2 now and leased 2, then by the time that lease terms up, then hopefully we'll be in a position then to maintain purchasing versus leasing. But this is a quick fix to get us out of the position we're in with the age and the mileage on the squads that we currently have. I think that was the way I understood the conversations in the past.
Well, I suppose I can buy into that concept, but I disagree with that again. If we buy 2 new squad cars, in another year, if we buy another one, we get in the thing of buying a squad car every year once we buy these 2. To me, leasing equipment is just throwing money down the rat hole. You know, no different than we're trying to build a building to get out of the cat plant, because there again is a lease. We're spending money for it, and we're really not gaining an asset. You know, if you want to lease 2 vehicles, then don't buy 2. I don't think we need 4 squad cars. You know, we're at the end of here, and we're raising taxes, but we've got some of these things in there that, to me, you know, you might say I'm too conservative, but you know, I pay taxes in this town too. I just think that's a lot to ask the citizens of the town. We're going up from $6.97 or $7.97 to $8.11, and yet we have stuff like this in the budget. Could we get that down to $8.08? You know, the other thing I question is for the economic development. If the state passes that bill that bans it from Scott County, Polk County, Lynn County, you know, where are we at there, unless we approve it before it gets passed at the state level? So there's some things, there's some questions, but I think Nevada's done a good job putting this all together and bouncing out. We're using $188,000 out of the sales option tax to balance the budget, which we used a similar number last year. Years before that, we used 100,000. You know, I get back to our very first budget presented to us, and Nevada did a good job putting all the numbers together, but that was with a 3-cent increase, and we could make it work. So I just think we need to dial this back a little bit for the benefit of the taxpayers.
I'll touch on the squad cars, and I know, and I respect your opinion. I I have a different view on it. As I've said before, I think departments that I've seen that have maintained a squad car per individual seem to take better care of them and they seem to last longer. And again, that's something I've seen with my business and I've seen with other agencies in town. So, I think that's part of the, I wouldn't say that the chief is trying to get up to having a squad for every person right now, but unfortunately, for the past several years, there's never been a planned schedule for the replacement like you talked about. And that's something that is absolutely necessary, because otherwise we're gonna be playing catch up like I think we're doing right now. You know, could he do the same with less? I'm sure he could be creative and do that. My perspective is it's been in there this whole time and now we're towards the end of the budget. I'm comfortable with it there. I'm comfortable with those expenses. I also understand that there's other things that we need to spend money on. And again, I would lean towards the reserves. We don't need that money in the reserves. And again, raising taxes to do these necessary things, we shouldn't have all that money sitting in reserves too when we have projects that are absolutely necessarily needed now. And you're right, with some of that legislative changes coming up, it's scary with the growth cap rate. I mean, this could hurt everybody, especially cities like us that are growing.
No, that will hurt us. It'll hurt the towns that have been fiscal responsible. You know, there's no doubt about that. Last time, it wasn't our current chief, the previous chief came to us and wanted a squad car. We bought them 2. They didn't ask for a squad car last year that I remember.
I think so.
You know, we can get on a schedule. I mean, we run 3 shifts, sometimes 2 cars a shift. There's X amount of miles and hours on those squad cars. That's it. I mean, we as a company cannot buy a vehicle for every individual person. Just doesn't make sense. With the increased vehicles, there goes increased insurance, increased exposure. Everything's involved. You know, I think we have 7 squads now, 8 squads. Add 4 more to it, that's 12. How many officers do we have?
11 plus
11.
Just for clarification, 2 of those vehicles that are in the PD budget are to replace 2. One that's being used that's not suitable for pursuit. And I believe it's been rated not even suitable for patrol at this point. And then one to replace another very high mileage end of its lifespan vehicle. So 2 of those are replacements. 2 of those that are proposed would be additions to the fleet in an attempt to take a larger expense right now to get on a rotation that would allow us to have a more predictable, more manageable, cost-effective budget with the maintenance. One thing that was taken into consideration for it was seeing the increase in police vehicle maintenance over the past fiscal years, going from we had 9,600 one year, 18,300. This year, we're projected to be at 19,800. So we're seeing the cost of police vehicle maintenance continue to increase substantially. And it's pretty comparable to the street and snow vehicle maintenance, which are, as we know, other vehicles, other fleets that are run really hard and continuously. So what the goal is to get a fleet that we can have enough vehicles to run them a little less, to be able to get them on a rotation to replace them every defined couple of years, whatever we look at for that vehicle rotation, so that we can easily project what our cost is going to be for vehicle replacement each year and get a more manageable and more predictable maintenance schedule. It has been a significant increase for police vehicle maintenance.
How much do we have budgeted for the lease?
I believe the chief provided us with kind of like an outlet on the back of that sheet when he was presenting.
Yeah, there was a,
I don't know if I still have a copy of that in this file.
it was provided in the original, budget that you received. Let me see if I've got a copy here.
No, I don't have it.
Back to what Ryan said, I remember it kind of similar to that too. And one of the reasons behind the lease was, even though it's 2 additional cars, it's actually saving money because it's about $11,000 to $13,000 per police car after you buy the police car to turn it into a police car. And the lease on those 2 Durangos is outfitted with all the lights and sirens and everything ready to go, included in that lease payment, except for installing the radio and the computer pad.
And do we have a limit on the mileage on them per year?
We have a limit on the mileage of the police vehicles?
On the lease terms.
Oh, no, because it's lease, and at the end of the lease, you would trade it for a new lease or buy it for $1.
You know, the companies that do that do it to make money.
To lease.
Yeah.
Questions I can answer while I look for it?
Then are we responsible for all damages they may incur during the lease?
I would assume so.
Yeah, because we're purchasing it just over a 3-year or 4-year. But, I mean, the budget, the proposed budget is for a 3-year lease for 2.
Call it a lease, but also call it rent to own. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're buying it for $1, there's
Financing,
gonna still be value in that vehicle when you sell it, you would hope.
Right, but we just got talked about our reserves. Why would we lease something when we have reserves where we could buy it? So then it comes down to the question of, do we really need 4 vehicles?
Was Chief coming to the council meeting tonight, you know?
I'm not sure.
If the 2 are leased or if there are reserves to purchase, then I believe either way, it needs to be done. So when you're looking at those vehicles that are past their prime and are still being utilized, it's unsafe for those officers who are in those vehicles, especially if they're attempting to do a pursuit, if need be. I believe in fiscal responsibility as well. I believe that this is something that this city has done well. Individuals on the finance committee have been excellent with it. I also do recall numerous citizens that I've spoke to who are okay, including myself, okay with the taxes being raised. You know, if it's going to support our police department, I'm all for that. I would pay extra, definitely. We had outpouring with support before. We had community members in the past when we were looking at funds and fundraising, what that looks like. And gosh, we had a packed room with people here to support our local police department. At that particular time, the chief at the time was trying to save money, I do believe, and we didn't go out and purchase an outright suited up, fitted up K9 vehicle. This was one that we had, and we did modifications to it. So maybe this is something that we need to look at as well. So with everything, if it's leased or reserves, it's okay. It's okay to move forward with that. If it's going to benefit our police department, I stand behind that.
One thing,
Sorry, I can send that schedule back out to everyone. I think it was with your first draft of the budget that showed a breakdown of what the proposed rotation would be, and it also gave all of the purchase versus lease, the different lease terms. You could do 3 years or 4 years, the different vehicles that were quoted, in the prices of each as well.
Frank, just for clarification, the car that's not usable anymore because it's not speed rated, my understanding, it's got a problem with the rear suspension. Fix it. There was a Ford Explorer that they took the SRO officer used over at the high school. He's no longer using that. I don't know where it's at. The last full size, that was all wore out. The fire department is still using it to this date, the chief's car. As far as Adrian talking about the K9 vehicle, we bought a brand new full-size Tahoe. But they refitted an old car and the chief at the time made that brand new vehicle an administrative car for him to drive. Credit to our current chief, he marked that up and put it in service. So it's not that we haven't funded the police. Been a big advocate of the police, but it comes down to a want and a need with me. And I just can't justify getting 4 new squad cars. I can't justify leasing one because that company's in to make money. My common sense tells me it'd be cheaper if we bought it, if that was deemed that we needed that many vehicles. It's not like we don't have cash reserves to do that. Still haven't seen a price on a Dodge pickup.
I sent them out. I've got them right here too. I do have those.
They do not make a speed rated or patrol issue pickup truck. Andrew checked into that. That's set up for severe duty like the Charger, the Durango, or like they make a special Explorer, special Tahoe. The towns that choose to do that are using just regular civilian trucks. They don't have an actual.
They must be holding up okay because Illinois State Police is running F-150s now. Sheriff's Department's running Dodge Rams, and I can't help but to think that they're probably gonna just work out fine. I don't think they necessarily have to be police rated, so to speak. And the other thing, you know, the question on how many do we need, I'm also, you know, taking in account what the chief is recommending and asking for. And I've seen him do really good things, so you know, that's one of the other reasons I'm leaning towards his expertise on the department that he's running. If that's what he feels he needs, then I think that's our job to find a way to make it work unless it absolutely doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. You know, I'm sorry, I'm all for giving them the tools, they do a great job, you know, but why not ask for the sky and see if you can get the sky? You know, I can't tell you that it's warranted to turn over 50% of our fleet right now. If it is, we have a different issue with maintenance.
There are good arguments on both sides. You make good points, Brian. I really do agree with that, as does Ryan. But I'm with you too, and I don't know what a want and what a need is. And I wish the chief was here so he could maybe reiterate that for us and explain it from his point of view. Because in my mind, I'm not totally certain what is a want and what is a need. But with that said, kind of like Ryan said as well, the chief has made some good decisions since he's been the chief, you know, and has not steered us wrong. And I want to put faith in our employees. That's one of the things I've always tried to do, whether that's public works or whether that's administration or whether that's police. So I'm probably leaning more towards supporting it the way that it is.
Let me ask you this, Brian, I'll ask you, versus leasing 2 vehicles, would you be happy with purchasing 3 squad cars outright and using reserves for one of those?
Absolutely, I'm always in favor of buying outright versus leasing. I think if we lease, we're throwing that money down the drain because that company's not doing it They're not in that business for zero profit.
So we've got an opportunity to, talk with the chief and see, pick his brain on that next time we see him. If that's an alternative, and you're looking at, let's say you purchased this police rated F-150 for 47, you're gonna have just shy of 70,000 by the time you outfit it.
I believe the reason there was 4 talked about, one, like I said, has only been deemed fit just to drive to high school and back. There's another one that's had tons of transmission issues, and it's pretty much houred out, and there's 2 other cars that don't have any, like, terrible mechanical thing, but hours-wise, they're miled out too with the hour meter on them, so that's where the number 4 came from. Can he probably do what 2 to replace the 2 worst ones? Yeah, and then they could move one of the other ones is miled out probably to be the car that goes to the high school and the one that patrols in town or whatever. And back to something Brian said a little bit ago, the reason we're asking to increase taxes isn't to buy police cars. It's about all the other projects that have been talked about for the last several council meetings. We have lots of road work, like Fellner's, for example, that's in front of us right here. We have to figure out how we're gonna pay for that. LeClaire Road is failing right in front of our eyes. The guys are doing a great job patching with blacktop, but I mean, if you look at, there's more and more blacktop showing up every month on that road. Blackhawk Trail is gonna have to be addressed sooner or later. It's had patches put on it. I can just keep going. I mean, South Fifth Street over by the junior high is, to me, embarrassing as the mayor of this town. The way it looks down there at Sheridan Drive. That's been talked about for years, back when I was a councilman, like maybe the city and school get involved and do something with that road and get rid of that grassy boulevard and do something. So when they have donuts with dads and muffins with mom and whatever they have with grandparents, they don't park in the grass and destroy it. It's just a muddy mess over there. It's never been fixed for years and years and years. So I mean, what we're asking to raise taxes isn't about police cars. It's about what we need to do to our city.
And I agree with that, Frank, and I have not had one person, and I've talked to numerous people, have any problem with raising these taxes. They think it's necessary and that we have enough projects, as you outlined, that we can put this extra money towards.
Well, I think with all these road improvements, and what the state's trying to do, cap us, I think we're gonna be forced to, which I don't agree with, putting out a bond referendum for street repairs on some of these main streets. And then we can use debt levy to levy taxes. Now, it's still money coming out of my personal pocket and everybody in this room. But at least then the voters get a direct say-so and they want to do it or don't want to do it. And Frank, I don't want to be misconstrued. I'm not saying we're raising taxes for the police department and park board. I'm just saying those are things that should be looked at to limit the impact of what we are raising at this time. I mean, even if we can get it down 2 cents or 3 cents. I mean, right now our max levy is $8.11. Do we have to end up at $8.11? Do we end up at $8.08 or somewhere in there? That's all I'm saying. I just see things that are, in my opinion, the difference between a want and need at this point. And I'm trying to find a way to lessen the impact on the residents of the community. We got to be good to our employees, but we represent the taxpayers too. We got to be fair to them.
First of all, I'm still alive. I haven't had a coronary, but the park board comment, so that's a good thing.
Check your pulse.
25%.
Look at though, Brian, for the last 5-6 years, it's been 100. I mean, there's been no increase over the last 4 or 5 years in this.
Oh, there's 15,000 2 years ago on the other funding stream to the park board.
Well, good memory. But still, cost of things are going up. We have issues in our parks that need to be replaced. They've got a pretty ambitious CIP list. The Lion Shelter needs to be replaced. It's almost uninhabitable. And so they're already talking about working with the Lions Club and how to make that work. That's a big thing. They're looking at restrooms at Elm Green and Crandall Park, permanent ones. That's the big thing. The other thing is we had the damage out of Hickory Creek a couple weeks ago, and they are concerned about protecting our investment there with all the irrigation there and how are we gonna secure that? So they're getting quotes on numerous ways to do that. So I think they have a very, it's ambitious, but it's a very well thought out plan on how this money could be used. And as a former park board person, I will support that, because I think it's necessary, and I think there's been times where the park board hasn't been funded to get certain things done, as well as maybe some other boards as well.
I'm glad you brought up that securing that park, Scott, because that is something that's very much needed over there. And then I do want to make one more comment, going back to that, police vehicle that has been deemed not pursuit ready. In my opinion, and I've told this to the chief, it needs to be taken out of service now. It's a liability. And if that school resource officer needs to get in there and go on a high-speed chase and something happens, we knowingly allowed him to use that, even if it's just going from the high school to the police station. We need it pulled out of service now, if it's truly been deemed.
They're not using it now.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of them not using it. I thought that they still were.
He's driving a full-size SUV over there, not the Explorer.
And as for the street projects, I would like to see about possibly getting a CIP plan back in front of the council for consideration in the near future to help determine what projects we can start to plan out into future years for funding, because that allows the staff to determine which of those projects are going to be locally funded and may need to go to bond, and which ones we can start working on competitive funding applications for grants, and whether or not those projects that would be grant funded are on the list by state to even be able to be considered, because they have to be on that list first. And also to figure out what might be TIF eligible or not. So getting that CIP plan adopted, it's still something we work and look at every year. It's not an automatic projects into fiscal years. It just helps us for planning those a little bit better and determining which projects we need to be working on funding for. Sometimes those grant applications and the funding, the programmed funding for those years are sometimes multiple years away from when you start looking at doing that project. So being able to plan those out a little bit and have that prioritized list for the staff to be able to work effectively from would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on that. A lot of those applications, like she said, yeah, they want to know kind of what you're doing, but they also want to say, where in your CIP plan are you showing that this is the project that you actually want to do? So getting it, through council completely and approved would be a huge step for us to start looking at other types of funding. Because more often than not, you can't just say, well, we want to do this, this, and this. They want to know that's in our CIP plan and that it is ready, and it's supported by the council. The other thing I wanted to point out was, I know, and I'm just racking my brain because I know police is the hot topic tonight. I know that, I believe in that first section, in that first meeting that Chief gave us this information, one of his goals was to be at some point, whatever council decides on this rotation, is that it will ultimately save the city money because less usage on a car, it's going to last longer, but then also it'll have a cycle to where by the time you need a new one, you guys spent less money in the long term. So we'll eventually start saving us, the city, money, getting on a rotation that has less usage of cars and not having to spend as much on the maintenance as well. I believe he had that. That was one of his main priorities on creating that rotational list that he gave us.
Numbers on the lease come out to anywhere from $73,000 to $76,000. Might as well buy it. Bond issues, I think the state changed the law. The only time we can go out for a bond is on the general city election now. So we're limited to doing that bond every 2 years. So that's something to think about. I just hate it because we have to pay interest thing. We do need to keep some of our capital reserves in place for 80% or the 20% match if we can get funding on it. I think the bike path, we did a little more than 20% match to move us to the top of the line in that process. So it's gonna be a balancing act over the next 3-4 years till we can get all this figured out, what the state's gonna do to us.
And then, I'm gonna bring it up again, so it doesn't get forgotten about tonight, but, I'd still like to see us do some sidewalk improvements and have money set aside for that Sheridan Meadows, pond, debacle. And I would also, I think, we have that report now, we should be in a position that we could be getting some engineering studies done, so we know what the opportunities look like to fix the pond.
I was actually thinking about that today, Brian, with that, and whatever we do with that pond down there, wetland, whatever you call it, I would like to see if environmental samples can be taken of the water. Because there's, it is believed that there's farm chemicals being flushed in there when it rains from a local establishment. I would like to get the water tested. I would like to get the soil underneath, some samples tested, to see what we are actually dealing with too, as we move forward, especially if we're gonna dredge that out. And what type of, it is that contaminated, what type of disposal that we need to look at. Hopefully it's not big. Hopefully we can utilize that as fill somewhere, so, or for farmland. But I would really like to see that, to see, if that's, if those perceptions are true of what's being washed in there. Of course, it's gonna be a runoff for farm fields. That's just, it's natural. I know a lot of farmers are looking at buffers and trying to do that and abide by the environment. But, whatever we can do and hold companies responsible for excess chemicals washed into our waterways, I believe we should really look at that. So as we move forward with that, I'd like to get some environmental samples of the water and soil underneath that pond and wetland. Also with the, I think, Letty great point, and Nevada, you as well, as we move forward with these roads. First Street, I brought it before, and at the time our engineer, and that's the engineer's expertise. That's what we pay him for. They thought right now we didn't need any turn lanes all throughout there. I beg to differ, but maybe in the future we're going to redo that road again. However, as I think, I don't know, so my memory here, but when we put that turn lane down there on First and Blackhawk, if you guys remember, I don't know how many years ago that was, but that's been huge, to lessen up that congestion, the traffic, when you're trying to turn on there, right in front of logistics, there with semis pulling in, I would like to have a turn lane there. So we're not holding up traffic. At times, if you're there and it's rush hour, cold, you got traffic backed up almost to Blackhawk. That creates safety concerns. When you're trying to drive, you're trying to turn, the traffic's oncoming, and so I believe we really need to have one there, so those semis can get off safely and turn, and it's not backing up traffic. Last but not least, with the sidewalks there, I've been talking, I've been talking about the sidewalks forever. Fifth Street's a big concern. I've been advocating with that, but also on Iowa Street. We need to get a sidewalk through there as soon as possible. We do. You see the kids there, you see the kids right in the street. That's not kosher. I think that's the main priority. Whoever owns that land, can we hold them responsible? Is there something that we can do, again, that can pay a portion of that? But we need to link. We have to link that sidewalk to the schools. We do. So over out front there with the car wash too. There's so many gaps there. We know it's a public health hazard. Scott County's looked at it before, but this has been discussed years in the past. That's something that we need to really look at. Moving forward, I would like to see a connection with the sidewalk come this year on Iowa. I believe it needs to get done. That should be a main priority.
And part of it did get done by the high school when they did that last field, so we got a little bit of
We got a little bit, that's right. So, but there's a huge stretch there, which is somewhat dangerous.
I'll give you the Dockery 101. we have all these priorities, all these needs, and we have one pie revenue. So depends on how we slice up that pie and creating priorities. You know, unless we want to get into things, starting to assess adjacent neighbors. There's other things, but at the end of the day, we can come up with a wish list that costs tens of millions of dollars. Problem is, we just don't have the money to pay for it. So just something we all have to be aware of.
So keeping the rate at 8.11 is a good start.
What's that?
Keeping the rate at 8.11 is a good start.
How about keeping the rate lower than going out for a bond for some of these improvements?
I'm not sure we can wait for that.
It's almost 7.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Hold on, before we do that, are you guys comfortable with, I mean, I'm hearing 3 of you, I think are comfortable with the 811. Dan is sick tonight, but do you want to have another committee of the whole to talk about this, or is enough of you comfortable for Nevada to move this a little farther?
Yeah,
It needs to get done.
it would just be for the budget. Max levy public hearing is our next meeting,
Right.
so do we need to have
April
another
2nd,
budget meeting?
Right?
Yeah, the 811 doesn't matter.
I like the 811. Again, if we would have raised the taxes a nickel a year over all these years, we probably wouldn't be where we're at right now too. So I'm in favor of leaving it where we're at.
And then for the budget, aside from the tax levy, do we need another budget meeting before we go to our public hearing for budget adoption?
I'm okay with it, so.
I'm okay with it.
I'm good.
I'd like to have another one depending on, see what the numbers with 3 squads look like. And also, depends on the outcome of our closed session tonight, to see if anything else is adjusted.
I'm not certain if, I mean, we can, I'm not certain when that's gonna get worked in. I mean, will we have to do it on the 31st? Or can Chief just put that out in an email for us to view? And then there's any
You
question,
should have that information unless there's
then
more
if
information
there's-
you're looking for. We give all the numbers for all the purchases and lease and the different models and
This
all
year,
the
yeah.
terms.
the trucks too,
Yep.
is that, when in that, I might have,
I'll resend it. It's been a little while.
Mr. Campbell has it.
that might have got, okay, so.
Yep, I can resend it.
Could we do this?
But if there's.
Could we remove one of the leases out of the budget? Take Brian's suggestion and use reserves for one of the vehicles. And that still leaves a leased vehicle in the budget that we can get the answers that we need from the chief.
I don't think we need 4 cars.
I understand you don't. I think we do. Then I think that's the advice that chief is the reason he's asking to get him where he feels he needs to be. So again, I'm comfortable with the 4 right now. To appease your questions, then maybe there needs to be some more questions asked to him as greater detail or for memory's sake, why. But as it stands, I'm okay with the 4 vehicles. In my opinion, again, it's different than yours. I feel that more squad cars that are individually taken care of are gonna last longer. And like Letty said, in the future, the goal is to save the city money then.
But I get back to, I know multiple vehicles are hard. Usually they don't keep them clean, is the biggest thing. But at the end of the day, if our vehicles are having mechanical issues or getting torn up, we have a different issue.
Another reason why we need a new city hall, police station, to keep those vehicles covered, and maintain that maintenance,
You know that pie?
and avoid the wear and tear. So, hey, man, I'm just as fiscal responsible as you, Brian, I know, but hey, you know, we know what we need. And we can't keep pushing things off, we can't. So, here as a city, you know, there's been negative comments about us tabling things, and pushing things off, and talking about it, and then avoiding it. Kind of like Sherman Meadows. We need to be proactive in this community. You know, we are growing, we are prospering. We need to reflect that within our community.
I will say in the past, our growth has enabled us to keep the levy rate and not have to raise it a nickel a year. I mean, that's one thing, the growth has always offset our additional expenses. But now the state's limiting us on our growth. So that could change things. But Scott, your comment, that's why we didn't do it every year, because of the growth countered that.
Just for some additional perspective on the proposed legislation, if that were to pass, the last 2 years we've been limited with a 2% and a 3% reduction the past 2 years of growth. We've been able to maintain operations and still put money towards capital projects. And we still have the option of using the special revenue levies, which we are using this year, which are things we didn't use in the past year. So it still allows us to be able to maintain that revenue. We're fortunate enough, we never used those levies in the past, so we can use those now to cover things like our liability and general insurance. We can use it for employee benefits, those types of things. So we do have those options to make up that revenue growth, but we have experienced the capped growth at 2% and 3% the last 2 fiscal years.
And this legislation, and Jeff, I don't know if you've researched it more, there's a formula in there where they have the 2%, but they're also issuing some type of a credit towards growth from the previous cycle, but I haven't figured all that out yet.
Right, and things are changing so rapidly, it's hard to tell, you know, what's gonna happen and what's not.
So they actually vote on it and it's signed by the governor, we have no idea.
Right.
So with that, I'll repeat my motion for adjournment, Your Honor.
Well, we still got one more thing though. I've heard, I think 2 of you about the police cars.
I'm good with 4. I like buying 3, leasing 1, and whatever the chief says, I'm good with that. I'm not certain that I need to have another meeting to discuss that.
So the consensus is to move forward with 4, either purchasing 3 and leasing 1, or purchasing 2 and leasing 2.
I wouldn't care if you wanted to purchase 2 out of the reserves. I'm in favor of 4. That's my vote.
That was the reason that number's there, because basically 4 police cars are wore out. It isn't from lack of maintenance from the city's service department. They're just wore out. That's what's wrong with them.
I'm good.
You have a consensus amongst the council present, but I don't agree with that.
Okay. For the record, show that. Now, Brian, do you wanna make?
Can we make part of that caveat that he has to make one of them a truck?
I'm gonna remake my motion for adjournment, Your Honor.
Okay,
And
all
I'll second it again.
right, motion by Dr. second by Campbell. To adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Adjourn at 7:03. We're gonna take a quick break here and then we'll start our regular council meeting.